Hello and welcome to another Big Data London webinar. Today we're looking at fantastic data initiatives and where to find them. So I'm Andy Steed, Content Director of Big Data London. I'm joined today by Gabe Musker from Mango Solutions. Hi, Gabe.
Hiya.
Like all sessions that we do here, it's designed to be interactive. So please do send in your questions at any point. I thought today, given it's the start of the festive season, perhaps you could send in your big data film puns as well, seeing as we've got such an imaginative title for this one. The prize will be announced at the end. Don't get too excited. I imagine it's going to be a free ticket to Big Data London. Yes, so without further ado, I'd like to pass on to our featured presenter today. Over to you, Gabe.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Andy. And thanks to Big Data London for having me here and replaying this talk. So I'm, as Andy said, I'm Gabe Musker. I'm a junior data consultant at Mango Solutions, and I'm here to talk to you today about fantastic data initiatives and where to find them. I should, for legal reasons, point out that any resemblance to any wizard-based franchises is purely coincidental. And without further ado, let's move on from this slide that took way too long to make. So I'd imagine that many of you watching here today are at some stage in the process of some kind of digital or data-driven transformation within your organization. And my hope is that today's talk speaks to you because I'm going to lay out a template for how we at Mango Solutions go about finding and evaluating fantastic data ideas. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about my perspective, about the hype around data, about how we find fantastic data initiatives, about our data themes, which is our way of looking at how data can add business value. We're going to talk about the idea of, so that, right, what comes next. And then we're going to talk about how to measure and assess impact and readiness. So first things first, let me give you a little bit of perspective on my journey so you know where I'm speaking from. So growing up, I always had a bit of an affinity for sort of maths and computers, as I think a lot of people in this industry did. But at school, I'd never really heard of anyone being a data scientist or a data analyst. The only jobs that I sort of knew that were to do with maths growing up were accountants and statisticians, both of which I thought at the time sounded pretty boring. But what they did tell us at school was that they were preparing us for jobs that didn't exist. And I think in the case of data science, they were right. It wasn't until I got to sixth form that I even heard the word or the phrase data science. And it wasn't until I got to uni that I realized that actually, statistics is kind of cool. So I graduated from the University of Warwick with my master's degree in statistics. Unfortunately, I don't have a graduation photo to show you because I'm a graduate of one of the COVID summers. So I actually haven't even had my ceremony yet. And straight after graduating, I started working at Mango, which is an Ascent company, in the data consulting team. So to give you a bit of background, Mango was founded in 2002 as a kind of boutique data science consultancy by Rich Pugh, who some of you may know did this talk at Big Data London in person. And he's head of the data consulting team and therefore my boss. This time last year, Mango was acquired by a company called Ascent Software, and we suddenly went from a team of like 80 people to a team of 400. Ascent are a software development company, and they've, with the acquisition of Mango and a couple of other companies, they exist in the intersection of data, software, and platform. And the idea is that we help businesses to create great digital capabilities, and so far, it's worked pretty well. But as you can see from the branding around this talk, we've kept the Mango brand going because one of the major differences between Mango and Ascent is the customers. So at Mango, we worked almost exclusively with enterprise customers. So that's, in the past, we've worked with big pharma, tier one banks, big insurers, and the government, the UK government. Whereas with Ascent, the customers are typically more mid-market or large mid-market, which means that the conversation goes from being about, how can you add to our data science capability to, we want to do stuff with data. Where do we start? And that's a really exciting thing to do now, starting at the beginning of that journey with companies rather than in the middle. And that's been a really exciting experience for all of us. What's been really fantastic for me about this job, and I realize I should maybe tone down how much I say fantastic in this presentation, is learning about everything about data that they didn't teach me at uni, right? So I learned all about, machine learning algorithms and statistical modeling techniques, but seeing how a business can be completely transformed with data, which is something I'd never even really thought about at uni, that's been a completely game-changing experience for me. And that means that my favorite parts of my job so far have been finding fantastic data initiatives, which I would qualify as the creation of capabilities that deliver true business value to underpin a transformation. And that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So the reason you're probably listening to this talk, as I said earlier, is that you believe in the potential of data to transform your organization. So whether you believe that data is the new oil or bacon or gold or currency or air or whatever it is, right? The role of data in business has changed. It's not that long ago that it was just simply a byproduct of doing business, right? It was something that you had to deal with or manage or protect. That's probably why I'd never heard of data science when I was at school. It wasn't a job because people didn't actually do things with their data, or at least most people didn't. They just had it and they had to deal with it. Nowadays, of course, business leaders see data as a way to create leaner, smarter, and more relevant companies. It's a way to gain and maintain competitor advantage, or depending on the industry you're in, it's a way to combat disruptive forces and stay relevant. In the data consulting team, which I'm a part of, we talk a lot about the difference between kind of what we do as Nouns, as a company, and then what we do as a team, as Verbs. And I'll explain what I mean by that. So a lot of the people who work in our business are data scientists or platform architects or software engineers, and they make stuff, right? They make dashboards or models or applications or APIs or pipelines. And this is the business model is make thing, sell thing, off you go. But I think in the consulting team, we work more in verbs, right? So we help businesses along the journey by helping them to become informed, right? And we do that by being, we help companies strategize, or we inspire, or we educate. And I think there's value to be gained on both sides of that. From our perspective, by staying with the customer for the long term, we get more value from them over that period. But I think for the companies as well, being with them for the journey allows them to add more value in different places they might not have thought. I think there's a finite amount of value that you can create with a set of nouns, but with a set of verbs, it's potentially limitless where you can go. Of course, the truth of the matter is that we need nouns and we need verbs, right? While it might be the case that you could buy a piece of software and then nobody in your company uses it, and you've gained nothing from it. Equally, we could come along and say, brilliant, you can do all these amazing things, but if we don't have the background, technically to make those things into a noun, into a piece of software or a model, then you're probably also not going to get any value from it. So what's great about what we do, I think, is that we have a bit of both. And I think that's the best way to go forward. And I think a lot of people here are probably going to recognize that that's a key thing, is a balance between nouns and verbs. So I think one of the key things we talk about in our team is how we approach the identification and the prioritization of data initiatives, right? So either that's to complement some strategic transformation, or it's just to deliver value as a standalone project, right? So interestingly, we're going back to nouns in a way here. So this is a business capability in some sense. It's either a dashboard or a model or whatever. And that allows someone in the business to do something new or something better. Typically, we believe the solution has data at its core, but it's delivered by a cross-functional team that might include data scientists or data engineers and software developers and all this. I think it's something that's important to be aware of is that the fantasticness of an initiative will change over time depending on where you are in your transformation. So early on, like with a lot of the businesses that we work with, sometimes there's no shame in just looking for the quick wins, finding the low-hanging fruit. But later on, when you're a bit more entrenched, it's worth looking for the big disruptive one. So I think instead of necessarily saying finding fantastic data initiatives, I think it's useful to think about finding the right data initiative. And one of the things to be really careful of here is the dangers of choosing the wrong data initiative. It's scarily easy to choose the wrong data initiative and not know it until the end of a project. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by that. So we were approached by an insurance company who were really keen to build what they would call an online to offline platform, which was a cool idea. The idea was that they wanted to optimize that journey of a customer being on their website and getting support there and connecting them then to a real person in a call center. The way that the system worked before was that it would just, they'd give you a number and you'd ring it and it would connect you to a random person in the call center. But they realized that they could actually get a lot of conversion rate increase if they tailored the person in the call center to the specific needs of the customer, which they knew about them from the data that they collected. So they got us involved and asked us to implement this solution. And luckily, the first thing we did is we went and spoke to IT and we explained to them this idea. And their first thing they said to us was, well, the phone system can't do that. It can't handle that. And we said, okay, well, how much would it cost to upgrade it? And they said £6 million, which was significantly greater than the value of the project. So that kind of scrapped the whole thing. But you can easily see a situation where we hadn't done that, and instead we ended up implementing something that was never going to be deployed, right? So that's just an example of what I mean by, the wrong data initiative. But I think the key message here is what I've got on the screen, which is that one of the biggest pitfalls in data is to brilliantly solve the wrong problem. And it's surprisingly easy to do. We see it all the time. And a failed data initiative is bad at any time, but a failed data initiative at the start of your journey could be fatal in building confidence in a transformation. So let's talk a bit about why finding the right data initiative can be tricky. So I imagine this slide is going to chime with a lot of people on this call, right? Because I think it's very applicable across a range of domains. On the left-hand side, we have the data practitioner who is focused on the potential capabilities and constraints of, the technical aspect of stuff. And on the right-hand side, we have the business stakeholder who's focused on the practicalities of change and the impact of the project within the business. And there is this often this communication gap or this knowledge gap between the two. I think as a data practitioner, you really need to focus on the empathy, right? So the last thing we want to do is ask a business stakeholder what they want to do with their data. But equally, I think when a business stakeholder hears that I'm a data practitioner or we as a business are data practitioners, there's a temptation that they start asking me just what I want to hear. So, for example, we're often in a situation where a business stakeholder understands enough about data to structure a sensible question, but the lack of understanding leads to preconceptions around what the right question to answer is. So we might identify the idea right next to the right idea, or kind of 80% of the right idea. So a great example of this is it came around a while back, and this is one of the kind of classic examples within our team. So we had a chief commercial officer who was interested in customer retention, right? Which is it's a 101 data science project, right? We spoke to the business stakeholder, and they said they wanted to understand the propensity of churn in their existing customers. In other words, how likely the customers are to churn. as a data scientist, that's a great project. You go build a propensity model, bosh, no problem, done it a million times. But, without asking yourself the so what question, it's easy to get the wrong output. So let me explain to you what I mean by that. Retention's a classic. So imagine we do that project and we build the perfect model, if such a thing existed, and we score the customers. And then in our spreadsheet of customers, we've got the rows, and then we've got a final column that is, propensity to churn in the next 3 months, say. And top of the list is a customer called Lucy. And say Lucy's got a 59% likelihood of churning in the next 3 months. You go, okay, 59%, that's kind of high, I guess. So maybe we do something, or maybe we don't. Do we want to retain Lucy? Is she a good customer? Is she buying lots of stuff off us, or is she just sticking to the low value deals? I don't really know. And the problem, I think, in that case is the wrong question was asked. So what the business stakeholder said to us was, we want to find out the propensity of customers to churn. What they really wanted to know was, how do I behave in a way that helps me to retain my high value customers? It's a much better question because it focuses on the business outcome. But you can see how we could have rushed into a propensity model project and just been left with a disappointing outcome. So how do we go about bridging this gap? Well, from the practitioner side, it's about empathy around business ambitions, right? So there's a real temptation to skip this, but it is really, really important. We've worked a lot in pharma and insurance and finance, and if you walk into an insurance company, it'd be easy to say, oh, you guys should just do a project around dynamic pricing for your portfolios. But that's just sort of throwing darts at a dartboard, right? You need a really good understanding of business ambitions, fears, drivers, constraints, culture, and all this stuff gives you a really solid basis on which to have a good conversation. So you've got to read the business report, you've got to talk to people in the business, understand reward metrics, understand pressures, and that's really going to help. On the business side, we think it's really important to focus on good data and analytic literacy training. So this isn't just about, we don't want to turn business leaders into data scientists, but it's about kind of demystifying the buzzwords and building confidence to a point where you want the business stakeholder to feel comfortable talking about data, both within their organization and then also to customers. A data conversation can be daunting for a business stakeholder, but we need them to get past the hype and agree on a common language. The nice thing is this feels like this is changing. It feels like data literacy levels are generally on the increase, but it's also happening in the public domain, not just in business. So, I mean, a great example is the last basically 18 months have been dominated by news around statistics around hospitalizations and COVID cases and new variants. And it's been a story that's really been told in the news through data. So I think that's helped. And I think in the business world, the rise of companies that champion using data has helped business leaders to see that there is, or business stakeholders to see there is value in this stuff. So that's how we believe we bridge the gap. But, what about the bit in the middle? Is it good enough to just say, okay, well, I've got empathy from my data practitioners and I've got, data literacy training from my business stakeholders, so my fantastic data initiatives are just going to appear? Well, we believe it's not quite that simple. And we need to build a framework around how to support having these great conversations. So there's a lot of different mechanisms that we use to have these conversations about how data can bring business value. But one of our most important ones, is our 5 data themes, right? So the way that we talk about this is that it's a lens through which to view data initiatives. Our aim here is to create an environment where language is not a barrier, where we can talk about outcomes and objectives and look at them through the lens of, how can data help our business be more informed? How can it help us be more intelligent, more efficient, more engaging, and more sustainable? This is our way of connecting broad statements, creating broad statements that connect our business ambition to data investment. So we start this process with these 5 words, which have connotations both in the business and in the data world. Because while we're trying to understand that there's ML and AI and data science and all these tech buzzwords, what are we actually trying to do? Well, like I said, we're trying to become more informed, intelligent, engaging, efficient, sustainable, for a start. Of course, there are plenty of other things we can do as well. But, even 5 words is a lot. So, we can start to have this conversation about business ambitions and understand priorities. And, really what these are saying are things like, is your business focused on sustainability? Is it focused on customers? Is it focused on, maximizing margins? What's the thing that your overriding, ambition theme? And once we've established these priorities, it gives us a really good conversation, a good framework to have these conversations about initiatives. So, say we wanted to focus on building a more intelligent organization. We might ask, okay, what's the one decision that you'd love to get right every single time? And what impact would it have? So like I think there's a potion, isn't there, in Harry Potter that they drink, and you just, you get everything right that day, whatever it is. So we would ask customers, say you've taken this potion, what would it be what would be the one decision that you would always want to get right? With efficiency, we talk about what's the one process you'd love to automate. If you had Commander Data from Star Trek, The Next Generation, as your, as an employee, what would you set him to do? And these are the ways that we start having conversations about data initiatives, but without talking about data. The other advantage to using an approach like this is that it creates a consistent language up and down the organization. So, again, go back to insurance. We've worked with insurance companies in the past who've had enough. They've had enough of this blockchain initiative, ML initiative, and AI initiative, data science initiative, blah, blah, blah. They've invested in the latest thing and seen nothing in return. We were asked by the head of data science for this insurance company, his team was about to be cut. And we said, and he tried to bring us in to help out. So our kind of aim there was we wanted to change the language. We quickly realized that as an organization, they were just trying to become a more intelligent business. So we changed the narrative and focused the efforts on decision improvement, which included like a suite of literacy training that connected the organization and the leadership around an investment on decision improvement. So moving away from the buzzwords and whatever the new fad in tech is today, it was just about business goals and how data is a tool for solving that. It ended up being a really good success. And that team has gone on to achieve great things, but largely that's down to creating a bridge between, the investment in data and the business ambitions. So the big question is, you've got your initiative, you've got your challenge, your business challenge, you're using data to solve it, and then you want to be able to say, so that, right? You're going, I've built this customer retention model. That's helping me to understand which customers I want to retain. I want to be a more informed or engaging business in that way. And then you're saying, so that I can retain the high value customers and ensure that we're generating more value from them and they're having a better experience with our company, right? That's the key thing, right? Is being able to say, so that. But we've been talking a lot about, data initiatives and how to find them and where they come from and connecting business ambitions to the potential of data and analytics. But what happens once you find them, right? Once you start down this path, it's easy to discover that there are a lot of initiatives that you could prioritize. There are so many things that you can run after. We call this the sweet shop moment, right? Because imagine you've walked into a sweet shop on the high street, but it's filled with data initiatives all around you, and you're going, wow, I want the bonbons and I want the rock and I want the Tangfastics, I want it all, but you've only got so much pocket money and you've only got so much time. So that's a really difficult thing to deal with. And our solution to that is we talk about kind of impact and a readiness criteria. So some of the work we do really early on when we talk to companies, and I'm talking about when we're at the start of the journey here, usually is that we want to talk a lot about, great, you've got this data initiative, but are you ready to implement it, right? Have you got the data in the right place? Are there people willing to implement the change, right? Are they going to change their behavior? Have you got the processes in place? All this stuff. And if it's not ready to be done, then it's not worth doing. And the other thing is the impact, right? How are you going to measure your success? Is it aligned to your business ambitions? Is this initiative at the right level of maturity for your business? So the problem is that my definition of a fantastic initiative might be different from someone else's. So establishing what that really means for the business is really, really important. And I'm sure a lot of people here will have seen or have similar kind of prioritization frameworks for their business initiatives. And it's just the same thing here. It's easy to get caught up in the hype around data, but the key focus is that it's just another business tool like any other. So, to wrap up, finding fantastic data initiatives is about defining fantastic. It's about identifying your challenge, building bridges between business stakeholders and data practitioners, using your data themes to frame your problems and ambitions, and measuring the readiness and the impact on your business. So thank you very much for watching. And if you've got any questions to ask me, then feel free to stick around and I'll try to answer what I can. Thank you very much.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, Gabe. If you'd like to just end the screen share now, and we'll just have the two of us on the screen. There we go. Big face. So yeah, no, thanks very much for that, and that was great. I had a question from my side before we jump into some of the ones that will be sent through. In terms of data teams and aligning them with the business strategies, does the sort of structure of the data team or where it fits in the company help or matter at all? I mean, I'm thinking, a data team that is dispersed amongst lots of different departments rather than being centrally aligned, or a data team that maybe sits under, an IT function maybe rather than its own kind of lineage into the overall sort of corporate structure. I mean, does that matter at all? Does a data need a defined voice to be able to speak to the business decision makers?
Well, I think the structure itself is probably it depends on what the organization needs. So if it's quite a disparate business with lots of different kind of unique functions, then probably having a data person sitting within each team is going to be really useful. But on the other hand, if it's a business, if you've got a business that you're a window cleaner or something and you do one thing, then having your data team centralized is probably the most useful. But what I think is key in every organization is having that voice, whether it's a chief data officer or someone who's a data leader or a champion of data within the organization, to push that stuff at the top level and at the kind of business driver level. That's the key to making sure that these things are really integrated into and aligned with your business goals and your business challenges. So thanks for the question, Eddie.
Yeah, no problems. Before I move on to my next question, we've had a couple of suggestions for the data film puns. So far, Basic Insight is leading the way. I want some better ones though, so do keep sending them through. I was also going to ask about that sort of storytelling aspect in terms of the data team. I mean, we looked a little bit about your background in the first couple of slides, through maths and statistics at university and stuff like that. And one of the things that I've been hearing a lot from about recently is the kind of diversity within a data team. And by diversity, probably the wrong choice of word. Probably, I mean different backgrounds academically rather than more conventional side of diversity, although that is important too. So, I mean, have you found that having a data team with a mix of, very heavily tech people and maybe some, arty people, perhaps more storyteller people, can help in terms of communicating the effectiveness of projects, perhaps?
Yeah, I think there's a real risk when you've got I don't know what the best way, a homogenous group of people in any situation, but particularly in data, there's a real risk that you go down a path and then, as we saw, the path is the wrong one for whatever reason. I can tell you about it, within our data consulting team at Mango, we come from our academic backgrounds are very varied. So we've got a couple of statisticians, some BI people, business analysts. I suppose it's not varied in the kind of broader sense of varied, but within the world of data, it's quite a mix of backgrounds. And I think that helps us to bring experiences from different places and speak the language of different people. And when you can do that, when you can tell that story and look at it from different perspectives, I think that process of kind of review and evaluation is always going to add to a good idea.
Perfect. And I'm going to go to a question that's just come in here about use cases, which I think would be a nice place to start. So valuable and feasible use cases that have been implemented by you recently. I suppose one thing that'd be good to understand is use cases of something that you've been able to demonstrate value really quickly, and then maybe a use case of something that's been more fantastic kind of and long term and bigger scale, I suppose.
Well, hopefully I can give you one that's 2 in 1. So we've recently been working with I'm not sure if I'm allowed to name them, so I won't, but they're an environmental services organization. So they do they essentially bid for contracts on waste management, picking up people's bins, and they were really keen on the kind of double-edged sword of sustainability and efficiency. So they really wanted to essentially they wanted to cut their carbon emissions, and they wanted to cut how much money they were spending on their fleet of vehicles. So we worked with them, and over the course of probably 6 months or so, we interviewed a lot of their key business stakeholders. We talked to them about, culture and tech and platform and every aspect of this that we could to try and get a sense of what their ambitions were. And using our framework of impact and readiness, we were able to identify 4 key initiatives that would help them to reduce those 2 things. So one of them, well, 2 of them really were route optimization for their contracts. So how can we find the optimal route that passes you through all the bins on the route, and then but also so that will save you on fuel, reducing your costs, and then obviously less fuel means less carbon emissions. There was also a missed bins complaints reduction. So we wanted to identify the factors that drive people who complain about missed bins, which is not necessarily the same thing as that organization missing a bin. And then the final thing was about commercial propositions and how we can integrate their data more closely with their commercial propositions. And then using a prioritization framework, we were able to narrow down with the organization which one of those 4 was the best solution for now. And we ended up going with the route optimization one. So that was our kind of quick win, high impact, they were ready for it, and it managed to achieve both the sustainability and the efficiency goal. But things like the missed bins and the commercial proposition further down the road are going to help to add value in the long term.
Perfect. Well, and in terms of in terms of that, I mean, how important is being able to demonstrate something quickly in your experience? Because it's something that is constantly referred to, the sort of speed of return. I mean, how important is it to be able to show very quick return?
I think when you're at the start of your journey, it's vital, right? Because inertia is the natural state for almost everyone. And when you come up to people who are just doing their jobs and say, we're going to completely change the way you do things, and it's going to be great in 2 years' time, a lot of people just go, go away, leave me alone, basically. So I think early on is really crucial to go for those quick wins and demonstrate value immediately, so you can build momentum from the top and then also from the bottom, and then you can push on to the kind of bigger, harder, more impactful solutions later on. But I think it's a great question.
Yeah, no, perfect. Well, from one great question to one question I was interested in from your presentation. If you had Commander Data from Star Trek as part of your data team, what job would you get him to do straight away?
I'd have him to, he'd always be making me cups of Earl Grey.
So, yeah. He'd be really efficient at that.
Yeah, he would. Yeah. No, in seriousness, I think in our job, we have to do a lot of human data gathering. So that's a lot of just interviewing people within different organizations to help to understand their business aims and ambitions. And I think throughout the course of the next generation, Commander Data was shown to have he grew in his empathy, didn't he? So I think if we had Commander Data at the end of the next generation, I'd be able to put him in front of those meetings and talk to other human beings and get him to gather that data for me, because I know he'd remember it all, which is definitely something I struggle with.
I like that. That's it's a journey.
Exactly.
By the way, we had a suggestion for is analytics this or analyze this, which would have worked on its own actually as its actual title. I think it's a really, really good suggestion. So well done. Well done. Whoever sent that through, we'll have a look afterwards. So a question for Mango and the R language. I suppose we should cover this if it's in your wheel arch there, Gabe. Do you embrace Python as well as R?
So me personally, I'm a hardcore Python, from day one. But at Mango, we are we have for a long time been driven by R. One of our big products is a product called ValidR, which is a validated build of R, so that we've basically put in a bunch of packages that we think could be really useful and made sure that they're secure and all of this stuff. And that's been a really successful product for us for a long time. Rich Pugh, my boss, was head of the R consortium for a while. But more recently, we have moved into embracing Python too. So we can't really be called R purists anymore, as much as I think some of us would like to.
I'm going to reword this question that's come in very, very slightly, just to give it a kind of more of a two-way feel. I think it's asking about, getting to the bottom of exactly what the business stakeholder thinks they want, are the important drivers of their business. So how do you determine the clarity of the stakeholder, what they consider, is important drivers of their business? I'd like to make that a little bit more two-way in terms of, how do they get something from the data person, because the vast majority of people who'll be watching today are data people. So I suppose that's why the questions come in like that. But, what's some strategies so that people can get on the same page when they're talking about this? Because there's a middle ground you want to find, right? But people are coming from different angles.
Well, I think absolutely, and it's going to sound like a cop-out, but data literacy training is really important. And I think not just, I mentioned it there in the framework of from a business stakeholder point of view, but from a data practitioner's point of view as well, data literacy can be useful for exactly that reason we're talking about, which is finding common language. The kind of quick win answer would be, if you're struggling with that in your organization, something you can try and establish is what we call a data dictionary, where you just agree, and it takes a while, it's a painful process, but you agree, this is what this word means to us, this is what this word means to, whatever it is, whether it's, domains or I can't, there's CRM and all this stuff, there's plenty of buzzwords that get thrown around, and you've just got to sit down with people who are going to be having those conversations and go, we agree that this is what this means, we agree that this is what this means. And at the end of that, that's, quite literally a way of agreeing a common language.
Perfect. And it's a bit like the book in Fantastic Data Initiatives and Where to Find Them as well, which I think is the origin of where that comes from. They write down all the wizards, monsters, something. I've
not actually seen it, so
I've seen lots of films like that with children. You're only ever half concentrating, but it's something to do with that. It's not quite Aliens. It's quite a lot better than Paw Patrol the movie. It's somewhere in the middle.
Quite a wide scale.
Yeah, quite a wide scale. There we go. So I'm going to finish up with a question that's come through. Thank you very much for your questions and all your silly film suggestions and everything. It's been really interactive. It's been great to see, actually. I'm going to finish up with a question or a modification of the question that's come through about skills, because it's always a nice way to kind of end it. What's the most important skills, or you can throw in characteristics if you want, of a data scientist, if people are looking for them, and good ones that you've worked with, good ones that you've worked with other companies, and obviously with Mango too. Skills, characteristics, traits, that kind of thing. What should people be looking for to bring people in?
I think number one is empathy and communication. Those are I think basically no matter what your job is, but specifically with data science, because our world is so, data hyped at the moment. People talk about it constantly, and everyone's going, from ministers, all the way down, everyone talks about data today. And the ability to communicate complex data ideas to anyone, essentially, but specifically people that you're trying to sell to, or people that you're trying to work with, like we do in the consulting team, is vital. I can't think of a more useful skill for a person to have who's working currently as a data scientist, because in the end you could come up with the most brilliant idea for a model or a business solution or whatever, but if you can't explain it to anyone, then no one's going to go about implementing it, are they?
No, very, very, very true. And I think it's a nice way to end it today. So thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you very much for the chat afterwards. Thank you very much to everyone at home and for joining in along with us. It's been a really fun one, this one. And it's always nice to see you. I think this is the last big Data London webinar that we'll be doing before Christmas. Obviously, you've probably done the first day of your Advent calendar today. So, hopefully we get a bit of a Christmas party season and all that sort of stuff going on this year, and everybody has a lot of fun in the run up to Christmas. So, again, thanks very much, Gabe. Thank you, everyone at home, and we'll see you again soon. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Cheers, Andy.